You know what I like to do is I like to bike, but I don't like to pedal. And I do like to carry stuff. So I'm excited about checking out this. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda out here in my garage because I just got a delivery that I'm super stoked about. It actually has like no markings on the outside. So I was actually wondering like what this is because it took a little while to get, a couple weeks or something. But inside, I've actually started to open it up here. I am super stoked because I know what it is. It is a bicycle, but it's not just any bike. It's a bike with a surprise and then another surprise, which should make it maybe the best bike that I've ever owned. And I'm super excited about getting it set up and trying it out. Now, the other thing I want to say is this will be easily the most complex bicycle I have ever owned or tried to put together. You can see here, there's some cables and wires coming out of this thing, which should kind of tell you that this is no ordinary bike. So let's get this thing unboxed, set up, and try it out. All right, I got the thing unboxed. Man, it is wrapped up very well. Lots of foam and bubble wrap that makes sure that it gets to you in pristine condition. Now, a couple things that I want to say here. Sometimes I am intimidated by a box because I think, this is going to be hard to set up, and then I open it up and things come out basically in one piece, kind of like some snowblowers and bikes and chairs that I bought. And so it's not as intimidating as it looks. Sometimes I open a box and I'm like, man, there are a lot of pieces. And this is one of those cases. I feel like I should grab a beer and just look at this thing for an hour to build up my confidence. As you can see, we've got a parts box there. The chain is in there. What you might be able to see here too is that there's 2 wheels here and 1 wheel there. There's 3 wheels on this thing. And that's either an extra wheel or this bike has 3 wheels. So we will find out here pretty soon. And even though I am a little intimidated, one thing I will tell you that I have learned from panda bears themselves is that as long as you're self-reliant, determined, creative, you will never find yourself facing extinction. So I'm just going to find the directions for putting this thing together and then start assembling it. Man, this definitely looks like something that I could easily screw up. All right, let's get on it. All right, went through the instruction books here. I think there's a lot of steps, but hopefully it's not too terribly complex. One thing I did notice is you're going to want like an adjustable wrench. I'm sure if you have a nice set of sockets or just wrenches, that's fine too, but one adjustable wrench apparently is what they suggest here. So the first thing we need to do, as far as I can tell, is get this rear axle onto the back of the bike there. So that is what I'm going to try to do. All right. So we've got the back of the bike over here. We also have these bolts in this little spacer, I think, installed there, and we need to remove that. We also need to remove this piece here, this little temporary piece. So on the back of the frame here, we have a bolt here, 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 and here. So 4 bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these bolts up. All right, this probably won't be the easiest thing to see, but we have kind of this loose bolt here and bolt here. And then we also have a couple of loose bolts on this rear axle here, right here. And what this is going to do is slide in here in between the rear, and the bolts will go into these slots right there. And then there are some slots in the front here, which will go onto those other bolts. You might have to loosen these up a little bit here because everything is pretty tight. All right, and now it might be a little easier to see here, but we've got these 2 bolts on this side and then 2 light bolts on that side. So we've got to now tighten these down. You just want to loosely tighten them. It says that you will do the final tightening after the chain is installed because you can see we've got our sprocket right there. All right, on to the next part. All right, next are the handlebars. They're kind of folded down here, but we've got this main post, which is going to kind of cam into the front portion here. So we're just going to kind of drop that down in there, and then we'll take just a little bit of a delicate touch to get her down in there. Okay, and then we will use the Allen keys that they include here to tighten that down. Once we get that tightened down, we're going to flip up the handlebars and then tighten them in place with the Allen key, and there's a nut right there to tighten that up. So I'm going to get this tightened down and this one adjusted to where I need the handlebars. All right, handlebars are on. Now we got to get the rear wheels on here. Looks like this is pretty simple. There's just a nut and a washer that we're going to take off of each side, and the wheels are going to go on. Now, I just want to point out here that we have 2 regular bicycle wheels, and then we have 1 wheel over there that has an electric motor in it, and that is not it's not going to be the one that we want because that one is going to go on the front. That's what gives you that little extra juice. This is all the pedaling power back here. Now, one thing I want to show you is that this one looks like that's going to be no problem. This one looks like there's a little spacer there. So don't lose the spacer because I think we might need it to space the wheel out. So that's the only difference on this particular side. And I have not been able to figure out if there is a difference between these wheels. All right, alert time. There is a left and a right side. And the right side here, this wheel looks the same, except for this inner piece here. You can see that opening is more oblong. And this has kind of like a nut right there or a receiver piece that is kind of cut on both sides. So that will fit that space there. So, you know, you're not going to be able to screw it up, but there is a left and right side. Okay, rear wheels are on, and I do just want to point out, it doesn't really matter for the installation here, but this wheel has that D-shaped kind of cam that goes onto the axle because the sprocket only drives this wheel. So it's a one-wheel drive. That wheel looks like it freewheels. So, you know, no differential needed or anything like that. And kind of makes sense when you're turning, you only want one wheel turning because then you're going to have one wheel, the inside wheel fighting it. Anyway, so that actually makes a lot of sense. I actually thought it was driving both wheels, but it's not. Now we are going to put on the front wheel here. And the first thing that we're going to have to do is take this apart here. So we're just going to have to loosen up this brake to make sure that that is open. And that is just a little piece right there that you have to kind of lift out and you'll have to put that back. Now, here is the wheel. Now, one thing that you could potentially screw up, and I don't think it's obvious here, but that motor has a lead coming out of it, and this lead is going to stay on the right side of the bike. So you're going to want to install it like this, because if you put it on the other way, when you hit that power, it's going to reverse you, I think. So just kind of remember that. It's not super obvious because of where the cable kind of drapes down here from the top where it'll plug in, but it's going to go over to the right side here, I believe. Okay, so let's get the bolts off of here so that I can get it onto the fork and get it all tightened up. All right, a couple of tips here that this little plastic boot comes off of the nut here. So you can see it kind of slides down there. So that'll be helpful to give yourself a little space. The other thing I want to show you is that one of these washers has like a little detent on it, this little protrusion. And I think that's what you're going to use to kind of lock it into place there. So that's probably going to be kind of on the down side here. So the little opening can drape over the top and then it will lock that into place. All right, so let's get it on the fork. All right, it's starting to look like a bike standing up on its own. Don't you love when your toddler starts walking on its own? Yeah, baby, woohoo! Man, I'm getting excited. I kind of just want to be able to ride this thing right now, but I know we got a lot of detail work, including I don't want to sit on the battery itself. Certainly gonna prefer that seat right there. So get on it. Oh, that's me. All right, I'll get on it. All right, it's time to put on the chain, the old ball and chain here. And it's got to go from one sprocket here and go to the rear sprocket. So it's gonna go around the part of the frame on this side. So once we get the chain on this sprocket, it's going to tow the wet sprocket. All right, whatever. I think this is kind of juicy right now. It doesn't really look super greasy, so I'm not sure if they have you do that later, but hopefully it should be pretty straightforward to put on. I am going to put on some sanitary gloves before I go ahead and try to maneuver this on, just in case I decide to eat some Cheetos while I'm doing it. All right, let's get it done. All right, I got the chain on, and it wasn't actually hard, and it wasn't the way I expected to do it. So right here, might be a little hard to see, but there is, two links that aren't finished, and the chain is just long enough to go over both of these sprockets. So what you need to do then is, in the end, there's an extra link that has two prongs, and you put it through there, and that'll hold the chain together. And then it has a capped end. So kind of looks like a figure eight. You'll put that on, and then to hold that on, it will have this little, it's almost like a cotter pin, and you slide that on and it will lock into place. So the ends of the pins have some little indentations and it slides in there and it will lock it in place. So now that I've gotten that done and the chain on, it seems so much better. And now I can take off my protective gloves. Ugh. All right, gonna wash my hands, and then we will get on to the next step. So I think the next thing is starting to get a little self-explanatory. We're going to put the seat in here. One thing that is kind of interesting is the seat pivots up so that you can get the battery out. I love this little feature. As you can see here, pivots like that, and then you just push in this switch here, and it will lock or unlock out of place. So that is a cool feature, but now we'll just loosen this up and then drop the seat in there, and we are starting to look like a real bike. All right, pedals are next, and they are marked L and R, and that means left and right. So what we are going to do is just screw those in. Any Loctite on there, you could probably put a dot if you want to, but because they're marked L and R, they're set up so that as you're cycling, they're supposed to tighten, okay? But if you're going to pedal backwards a lot, then, Loctite them. All right, let's put them in. And before you put on the pedal on the right side, you're going to want to make sure that you put your chain cover on. So that kind of slips over that pedal just like that. You can see we have Phillips head screw there. And so you will remove those so that you can tighten it down. And then there's one right under here as well. All right, let's get this on to keep my pant legs looking nice. All right, I've got one of the fenders here, and now we have to put on the rear deflectors. Now, what I want to show you is there's just a single screw right here, and then, again, a little detent that pops out here, and that is because it's going to screw in here, and that detent is going to hold it in place, keep it from turning. So this should be pretty straightforward to install, just like that. So get this little nut off, and the nut behind the camera can get this bike finished. So let's get on it. Now that I have the reflectors on the rear fenders, we've got to put on the struts. Looks like these are going to be pretty straightforward. You just kind of splay these out a little bit, fan them out, some might say. And then there are going to be little holes where you mount it up there. So you can see 1, 2, and 3. And you can see how this curves in here so that you can mount those on there. And then we will mount the bottom right here to this kind of inside fan right there. So we will hopefully hover these fenders right above the tires if we do it right. Let's give her a try. All right, now we have to install the front fender stay on the front fender here. There are these two little holes. This is going to be the clip that retains it down here underneath. And then this is going to be the stay that sticks on top, I believe, just like that. And then you're going to use these two screws to screw it down. There's some threading in here that will hold them down. So I'm going to install this up here, and then we will get it installed on the bike. And before you tighten down the stay, you want to take this strut right here and loop it over and put it underneath the stay and then tighten everything down so that you'll have this strut holding up the back of the fender. All right, about to get to this front fender on, I want to show you that there are two little screws here that are going to hold the bar that holds the front fender up over the wheel. So you're going to want to remove the little screws here, hold on to those, because then we will put this strut over that. And then this will be forward, this little mounting bracket. And you're going to actually have to remove this front screw here because that is going to slip back there. And then you're going to use the screw to hold this up as well. And then I think maybe even the light gets attached to that, but remove this screw, the two screws down here, and you're going to be on your way to getting this front fender on. Once you've got everything threaded through, then you're just going to kind of pivot this strut up here and put those screws back in there, and that should have your fender floating away from the tire. All right, I've got this fender dry fit here, but before you tighten in that screw, you want to grab your headlight here, and you will see that there's a little opening there. So you're gonna mount that in front of there. Make sure you don't crimp this wire here because that is gonna get plugged into this wire right there because it's gonna be powered off the battery, which we have, which is really cool. All right, so let's get the headlight installed and the screw tightened down, and then we should be done with this front fender. All right, on to the mechanical portion of this thing. We are definitely on the back nine now. So we have to install this rear brake. As you can see, this cable here is not connected to anything. So it's going to go first through this little piece right there. And then we have to get the spring out of the bag. And then you're going to put that on there. Then the cable is going to go through the opening right here. And this bolt is going to get tightened down and hold this cable into place. So that is going to be the brake on the rear wheels here. All right, just to try to give you a little more context, there is a little hole that goes through this bolt. So you want to back off this nut here so that this bolt is pretty loose and you can get the cable through the hole, and then you're going to tighten it down. Now, a couple things I would say is give a good tug on the cable because there's probably a lot of slack up through the system. You want to get that all out. And then what I want to say here too is I was kind of pressing this brake lever forward a little bit as I was tightening it down, just because there's still going to be a little slack. So I wanted to kind of take up that slack. And then I tightened this 10 millimeter bolt on the backside down, and that seems to have gotten everything working. All right, now on to the final steps. All right, now we're going to put in this basket. I want to say that it's nice because it's mostly put together for you. It just kind of unfolds. You can see we kind of have some door-like hinges here on the side. And so you are going to find these long bolts in your kit here, and that is just going to hold them together. That's going to create the form of the basket. And then you're going to have these two brackets that are going to lay in the bottom here, and you're going to take out the bolts from this D-bar and drop them down, and then you're going to pull out these bolts, put the basket in, put these bars down, and then drop the bolts back down and tighten it up. So let's try that. All right, now we're getting pretty close. You have to connect these two wires. This is going to connect the motor to the battery, and it's not obvious how these go in because there's a lot of pins in here, and so you have to look, and it's not going to be super clear here either because it's black on black, but there is a little arrow right there and a little arrow right there, and you just line those up and then press them together, and you do have to press them pretty hard because there's a lot of pins, but squish those together, keep doing it, and then press a little more, and then they will be plugged in. Now, let's get the battery charged up and see if this guy will run. All right, just FYI, because I did it, went back and tightened up some of the bolts that I only tightened up maybe half as much as I should have. The other thing is, even though you might have tightened stuff up, as things settle in, you might find them getting a little loose. So just a good chance to go back and tighten everything up once again. Now let's take a look at the battery here, because obviously it's going to have to get charged up. Flip that up. The battery is actually pretty clever. There's this little rubber cover that covers this port where you're going to charge it. So you do get the charging cable plugs in there. I don't think you actually have to remove it from the bike, so that's kind of nice. Now, the other thing that's really cool is you do get a key. It's kind of like a car, and it does a couple of things here. So right now it's in the off position, and the battery is locked into the chassis. There's a little pin right back there that holds it into the frame. Now, if I go here and then push in and then turn it like this, I think it's unlocked. And so I can lift it out, take it to my charger if I wanted to, or charge it right in here. Now, if I want to turn this on, I can just turn it like that, and now it's in the on position, and if I hit this battery button, it'll tell me my charge. Now, this battery is fully charged up. The other thing I want to show you here, if you didn't figure this out, is you have to plug this in. So in order to power the bike, this is the connector. It looks kind of just like your monitor extension cable, but obviously if you're going to take the battery out, have a spare battery, take the battery inside to charge it, you'll unplug it from there. This will go down. So I'm going to leave this on, and we are going to now see if this bike can roll. All right, also got the tires inflated. FYI, tire pressures are way higher in bikes than they are in cars. So I think these are called medium tires. If they were the fat tires, you can even go up to like 80 PSI. But on the medium tires, I think anywhere from 40 to 70 is recommended. So even on kids' bikes, it's like 40 or 50 PSI. Anyway, so I've got it turned on here. We have a little LED display right there. You can see it says full power there and a power button there. Although I'm not sure what it does. This is the light switch, so it's hard to tell right now, but if I turn it on and off, you can see that it's going on and off. So we have the headlight switch up there, and then we also have a horn, which is kind of cool. So that's really loud. I think it's coming from the headlight, so that is pretty cool. Now, the other thing I want to show you here is that the throttle is this piece of the handlebar. So if I turn it like this, it's going to move the bike, but I think you got to be going a little bit here. So, and then once you hold it down, it should just let you run. So let's go ahead and try it on the open road first, and then let's see if we can put this basket to use and actually make this a workhorse. All right, so first ride with this, I'm gonna have to adjust the seat here because it's a little bit low for me, and just starting to pedal here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and turn the throttle. Oh yeah, baby. Dude, it's going under its own power. All right, let's get on the road. See if we can. Oh my gosh. Okay, I am definitely on like pedal assist because I haven't even hit the throttle, and as I'm pedaling, it's moving me at a pretty good clip. Okay, so there's like a little sensor down on the sprocket, and I think that's how it's figuring out how to do it. And I think I can toggle through the modes with the power switch. So if I toggle it, all right, now I am, oh. Okay, so the power switch goes through different speed modes basically. And now that I'm going, I can just hit this throttle and freewheel. Dude, it's awesome. Not pedaling. And I'm cruising. I think this thing has like a 20-mile range, dude. Okay. Brakes, very good. Why would I want to stop? I want to go. This boy wants to run. You're either first or you're last, Ricky Bobby. Man, you can hear the wind, I'm sure. Because this thing is hauling. The other thing I will say is, it's a little weird riding a trike because you kind of forget about how you turn, I think, a little bit, because you're so used to kind of leaning into it. So the bike doesn't really do that. I mean, it kind of does, I guess, but you can't lean the chassis over to take advantage of the lean and kind of cut the wheels into the corner. The whole thing has to stay pretty flat just because of the nature of the trike. And so it's a little bit different experience. I mean, my thought is, oh, it's going to be more planted and stable. Yes, but even though it's flatter in a car, that's good, but it's a little disconcerting initially because you're just used to taking the turns and leaning in, and the bike doesn't do that. You kind of lean and the bike isn't following you. So it's just something you got to learn. And I would also say here, especially with the single wheel in the front and because it doesn't lean, you don't want to take the turns too fast, right? It can be easy and tempting to go at speed here because this bike kind of wants to run on its own, dude. It's like a little moped, but you don't want to do that. All right, I want to see if this bike can actually be a little workhorse. Let's try it out. All right, so what do I mean by little workhorse? I've got these pumpkins here. I've got pumpkins all over my place here, some up here, they're all over, and I want to get them back to the compost pile because now they're just going to rot, and I want them to go back into my soil and make my grass healthy. And they're too old to eat, otherwise I'd put them in a delicious pot. But because I got this basket right here, why wouldn't I put them in the basket and drive them back to the compost pile, which is way back in the forest? So normally I would just grab my wheelbarrow and kind of haul these things like a chump, but when I got electric power, why not use it? So let's see if this basket and the bike can handle going off-road a little bit. Let's try it. Okay, loaded up with pumpkins. Let's see if this thing can handle going off-road and get us back to the compost pile. All right, just kind of curious if this will be able to handle a little off-road action here. Oh man, holy smokes. Dude, this is long grass and lumpy. I've got my phone on image stabilization, but dude, she's just going. She's going, I'm not even pedaling. This is awesome. This is awesome. It's my new wheelbarrow, man. Woo! That is totally on bike power. Crazy. All right, pumpkins in the compost pile. Now I'm just gonna take this for a spin and see if I can enjoy the nice weather. Woo! Dude, this is crazy. I love it. I love it. Oh man, this terrain is less than ideal, but it'll shake the teeth out of you. No suspension on this guy, but I can't believe that it is cutting through this stuff. All right, guys, so I'm gonna give you my final thoughts here, but now that I've been writing this for the last few weeks, I want to give you some of my thoughts here and suggestions that I think is going to make your life a little easier. So one of the things that I noticed here when I was writing this is that the chain came off this back sprocket there, and I realized, oh man, I've got a lot of slack in the chain, and I'm going to have to take the chain off, and I'm going to have to remove a link. And then I realized this rear assembly here is attached to the frame, right? And so what I did is I loosened up these bolts on that side, and then I moved this rear assembly back, and I actually had to kind of use a rubber mallet to just kind of nudge it, manage it. And then I tightened everything back down, and now the chain is totally stiff. It's never come off again, so that's really nice. The other thing I want to mention is once you turn this thing on and you go through your cycles, this power switch goes through 3 levels as far as I can tell, and it's kind of 3 levels of pedal assist: low, medium, and high. So obviously as you're biking around, if you are on low and you're pedaling, you're just getting a little bit of assist, but on that high, it's really moving you. And it's really great depending on how tired you are or what kind of terrain you're on. And I've noticed that especially on high, it's really nice when I am stopped at a street and you're kind of looking, you've got an opening and you want to go, and it just kind of moves you across. So many times you are just like pedaling like a madman, especially because this doesn't have any gears, right? This is a lot of bike to move from a stop to get moving. So to have that electric assist is really nice. And then when you're on that high mode, if you twist this throttle here, man, it just goes. You don't have to pedal. It's like riding a moped, all right? The other thing I want to say here is when you are riding, this thing is kind of a cruiser. If you are used to being on that bike, taking those turns and cutting corners and carving, this is not the bike for you. This is like a leisurely transport, see the scenery, get around, kind of lazy type of bike, right? It just doesn't lean. And I mentioned that in one of my initial test rides, and it's something that you're gonna have to get used to. But when you realize, hey, this is perfect for like seaside towns, for quiet, lazy towns, for little villages, for rural areas, for places with a main street, for open roads, for parks, whatever, right? This is something you can just go and enjoy, and you don't have to worry about tipping over. It's very stable on the tricycle. You can carry stuff, you can take a lunch. But if you are someone who just wants to jump on something, you can ride to your local store, your local coffee shop. You don't have to lock it up because that's just kind of the town you live in. And this is the type of bike that's perfect because now you don't have to lean it against everything. You ride up, get off it. The other thing, talking about getting off, that is going to be a little bit of a learning experience for you, which I kind of learned, is getting on and off this thing. And so when I'm on my bike and I want to get off, my tendency is to kind of just step off to one side and then lift my leg over the back. So this is normally what I would do on a regular bike, and that's because I'm just kind of lifting my leg over the seat, and then you just have one rear wheel. But as you can see, my leg is kind of stuck on this basket here because that is a lot of stuff to cross over. So what I have found, and it's a little unnatural at first, but what you want to do is you just want to step down. You don't have a crossbar here like you do on a lot of men bikes. So you can just step down here. You don't have to worry about getting jacked in the undercarriage or anything. And then you step off this way. So instead of doing the Will Riker and pulling your leg all the way around here, you just want to step forward. It's something that you're going to have to kind of learn, but sometimes I get a little lazy and forget, but that's how you want to get off this thing. Now, the last thing I want to say about this thing is it's awesome and it's not that expensive. So electric bikes can be very expensive, thousands of dollars. And then to have something like a trike where you have some carrying capacity can be even more. And this comes with a really awesome battery, a big battery. It's easy to charge. I've got the charger hooked up inside. It's pretty easy to put together. I mean, it's not hard. It will take you a little while to put it together. And if you're kind of weak, it can definitely help to have a second person holding up some of these parts. But man, for under like $800, I think this thing is a steal. And I kind of want another one, man, because like I said, now you can potentially go out. I've seen some adapters here so that if you want to put on a baby seat or take out the family around, you can do some of those. I mean, some of the accessories I found are like $600. I mean, they're almost as expensive as the bike itself. But man, how cool is this to have that pedal assist? You want to commute to work. You want to go run errands. You just want to see some of the countryside. You want to see the town. You want to bike down the road to your neighbor's house, whatever it is. This Viribus bike is serious about making life a little more enjoyable. So if you want to pick this up, I will put a link to it in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.